So when we were setting up IntelliJ, I'll just quickly go briefly into it. So this is the main screen you should have. That was why I wanted someone to share theirs. Once you've downloaded the community version, I'll just show you the community version. So the URL has been given. This is you trying to set up your IntelliJ. You can see this URL here. That is where you can actually download it. And I've suggested for you to download the community edition setup, which is a free version. So there's no need for it to be asking you for a license. And then these are the steps you need to go through, and then once you've completed your setup, this is going to be the main screen, which you would get. This is the main screen everybody should have. And so what I'm then going to do is I'm going to share you this Git link. I'm going to put that in the chat here as well. I'm going to put it in Telegram as well. So what I'm going to need everybody to do is get that link, and then I'm going to go back to my power slide. And in here, you can see where it says get from version. That is where I'm going to need you to click on, and then you can paste that link I've just shared so that you can download the setup for your framework. So normally what should happen is, once you get that, you can see we have the test runner, we have the POM, and we have the test ng. I'll just quickly run through those setup. So for the test runner, all these informations will have been imported through that link I sent to you. So I've done a pre-setup so that we're faster in it, and then we can go more into how to inspect your elements and write your code and all of that. So that's basically what I want to focus on today. So with the test runner, basically what this shows us is how we can set up our files on here. And you can see where it says features. And then we've also got glue, which is glue means that whatever we've written in our features, we need it to be connected when you're inspecting your elements so that you're able to then run it. You're able to shoot up. Like when I say shoot up, I mean basically once it starts running, we'll be able to see something like this URL, which will actually, work for you. We'll get into proper practicals soon, but I'll just explain what exactly I've set up with regards to the framework. And then tags. Basically what tags tend to do is, if you're writing your features, for instance, you must have heard, because during the manual, the tutor would have spoken about smoke testing, regression testing, functional testing. So when you're writing your features at work, sometimes there might be some features that are regression. Example of what a regression, could be like, regression testing could be like, is just giving a brief example, like things that has to be repetitively done all the time. For instance, if you're going to be logging into a web page, for example, let's say your Yahoo Mail, for instance, you need to sign in, enter your username, enter your password. That is something that is used regularly. So you might want to do a regression testing of that, just to make sure that that doesn't fail. That's just giving you a quick example so you can understand that. So that's why we tend to use tags with it. I'll show you an example when I start writing my features. Then I'll add a tag. You can also add a tag in your test runner as well, so that whenever you want to run your test, for instance, then the tag will pick it up, knowing that this is exactly which tag I'm going to be working with. So that's what that does. And then your Cucumber test reports. So this is where you can generate your tests for, the test or the features that you've run. So that is what that is there for. And then we've also got your POM. POM, very, very, very important. So if we start from the beginning, when you're setting up your file, your project, for instance, you have like a group ID, which we've got here as, because this is we've got it as Blue Sky Citadel, and then we've got the Activate as Blue Sky Citadel training on there. Those information has to be written so that it's clear exactly what projects you're working on. And then if we're going downwards, then we have our dependencies. Our dependencies has to work based on what we're going to be using to set up your framework. For instance, with this particular framework, we're working with Cucumber, we're working with Selenium as well. And then your test ng for your test report. So with your dependencies, those things you have to add them in. Without them, then your project will not work because they do not have any dependencies for it to be able to work for your framework. So for instance, we're using Marvin as well with this. I'll show you the dependencies as we go along. So this is your Cucumber dependencies. And then you also have, as you can see, this Cucumber test ng as well. So you need all these dependencies so that they work. I'll just go down and you can see your Selenium as well, because like I said, with this framework, we're using Cucumber, we're using Selenium as well. So we've added those dependencies as well to this POM. And we've also got our driver as well. So driver is what you use. For instance, now you've got your Firefox. So those are like your explorers. We've got the Internet Explorer, we've got the Firefox, we've got Chrome. So you need to set those dependencies up as well, so that you are able to, when we say you're running your test, then you can either set up your Chrome to run your test, your Firefox, your Internet Explorer, depending on the company you're working for. So for this particular framework that I'll be working with, I'm going to be using the Chrome driver. So I've got the Chrome driver as well set up in my dependencies. You've also got your Selenium support. So basically all the dependencies we're going to be needing. This is your Marvin plugins. I did state as well that we're going to be using Marvin with our framework setup. So I've added the dependencies as well for it. And so that's about what I've got in my POM. So, and then we have your test ng as well. So as you can see here, your test ng, it's got the test runner, which means that they all work hand in hand. So these three files here, they're very important, or class, whichever one you want to call it. Your test runner, your POM, and your test ng has to be set up before we can even start anything. As you can see on here, the only other thing I've added is my Chrome driver, which I told you that I'm going to be running, working with the Chrome driver. But at the moment, apart from my Chrome driver, which I have added, I haven't added any other files or directories on here. So this is the initial setup for your framework. So, and the other thing that we also need to be aware of is, once your POM, test ng, test runner has been added, another thing you need to do just to make sure is, if you click on file and you go to settings, and you go to your plugins, you need to make sure that you've got, as you can see under here, I've got it as installed, and I've got Cucumber for Java as well as Gherkin. So I'll explain what Gherkin means, but before I get there, so if you click on Marketplace, then you need to search for those two things I've just mentioned, Cucumber for Java as well as Gherkins. You need to make sure that they're installed onto your framework as well. As I explained in the POM, Cucumber we're using Cucumber setup. Then I'll explain what Gherkins means. Gherkin is a language that we tend to use for making it easier for the business to understand what we've written. So we would normally use Gherkins when we're writing for our feature, which is our feature files. So basically, it's just for any layman. That's how I can sort of explain it better, because if someone that is not an automation tester look at your feature files, they should be able to understand exactly what you're trying to do, what actions and steps that we've said it would be for this to work or for us to test. So that's basically what the Gherkins language is being used for in testing. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to be adding our files, and then I'm going to be then writing one of the feature files in the Gherkins language before we then continue. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to start adding my feature files. But for me to get to my feature files, let me go to the POM, to the test runner. So if you notice in my test runner here, there is a part here. I'll just highlight it quickly. As you can see, it says features. For you to be able to get your features, you need to go through this part for you to be able to then add your feature files. That's basically what it means. And going by this part here, you can see here says SRC, and then we've got our test here. And then we've got our resources as well here. For you to be able to add your resources, I'll just show you how I did that. So if you right click, new, and then you click on directory, and then you type, I'm going to write my resources exactly as my features states here. That's exactly I'm going to write it. If you write it in not exactly the letters, then it would not work together, as in it would not sync in. So resources, okay, this is already saying that I have it here, but let me take this off. Let me make it as resource, but it should be resources. Then I click OK, and then I need to make this resources. I need to mark it as a test route. So I right click again, and then I scroll towards the bottom. You can see where it says mark directory as. Then I need to click on resources routes. Once you click on resources routes, I'm going to delete this. Then you have this symbol here. So that's telling you that it has been marked as resources routes. And once that's been done, the next thing that this states here is that we need to then add a file for features. So for me to do that, I'll right click on this. I'll go to new, directory, and then I'm going to write exactly the same name here, features. I'll click OK. So I've got features here under my resources. And then I'm going to, so we're going to be working on this URL today. So this is the URL we're going to be testing today. So that's https://qa.prepmajor.com/user-account/. So this is what I'm going to be using for my testing for the automation today. So what am I trying to do here? I'm going to try and register. So this is what we're going to be using as our sample. So we're going to be registering. And for me to do that, so I've got my features. I need to then create a file for registration. So as you can see, this is linked into this feature directory right now. This is a file. This is registration.feature. So I've named it exactly to what I'm trying to do. If I go back here, you see that there's login. If I wanted to work on login, if I am writing as well, I will have used login.feature. It just makes it easier for you to understand, for anybody that picks up your framework as well, to understand what we are expecting in this particular file. So anybody that sees this know that registration, oh, okay, definitely this person wants to do a registration on that account. So now the other thing I'm going to then do is I'm going to write a sample of how we write the Gherkin in my registration feature. And to start with that, I'm going to write feature. And as you can see, it already gives me, what I'm trying to write. It gives me like a pop-up of exactly what it is. So what exactly are we trying to do? We're trying to complete our registration. So let's say as a student, I want to register successfully. So after we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is, so what scenario are we trying to do? So I've said successfully. So which means that I want this action to go ahead without any issues. So that is going to be my scenario. And as you can see here, I'll explain as it's giving me quite a few pop-ups. So scenario means that we're registering for, let's say, one person. So I'm going to be registering today. Any other person can register individually. So that's what a scenario is. A scenario is just one action. It's a complete action, but it's just one action for a singular act. Whereas then when we have scenario outlines means that you can do multiple registration for different people, like in a workplace, for instance, or even let's even use Prep Major, for instance. If you wanted to register for multiple people, you can use scenario outline and then just list the, so let's go back here. So we can just list the username, the emails, and the password for multiple people listed under the scenario outline. So scenario outline is for multiples, whereas scenario is for singular. So, but today we're just going to be working with the singular, which is scenario. And what scenario are we trying to do today? We're working towards a valid scenario. So a valid scenario is because I've said it should be successful. If during the manual testing explanation, you can have an invalid scenario as well, which means that we do not want it to be successful. So if you have like, for instance, they've given you an acceptance criteria and they've given you a scenario of whereby we don't want capital letters with lowercase when you're entering your password. Obviously, if you change those acceptance criteria, the acceptance criteria that you've been given, and you don't put a capital letter or a lowercase, you're expecting that that should fail. So that is exactly what we can also do in a scenario. We can say an invalid registration is unsuccessful, for instance. But today we're doing a valid because we want it to be successful. So I'll just write in there, valid registration. And then under the Gherkin writing, or under Gherkins, when you're writing as a Gherkin, we have the given, when, and then. We tend to use those three majorly. So given is, what do we say given is? Given is when you're trying to navigate to something, when you're trying to get into something, that is your given. And then when is the action that you're trying to actually do in that particular URL or page that you're in. And then that is when that action that you've tried to do on the when is done successfully, or even when it's done unsuccessfully, the result basically is the then. So at the moment, we're going to be using the given because we're going to be starting something. And when it gives me examples, let me just explain to you what that also would mean. So background, you can see this background. I'm not going to be using it, but I'll explain it. So the background will normally work in effect of, if for instance, you have a lot of sort of like repetition when you're trying to do an action, or when you're writing your features. So for example, if I was going to be having a lot of different features, for instance, I had registration, I had login, I had, something else, my background will probably be given I'm navigating, because when I navigate, it applies to all of the features I'm writing. So I don't need to keep writing it into, or writing the codes repeatedly. It would just work for any of the features I'm working on. So that's basically why we use a background. Anything that is repetitive across all the features that you're writing, then you can use a background instead of having to. So for instance, if I did a background, for instance, I'm just using this as example, and I say, I navigate. So this is the background. This background here, it would normally be above your scenarios. So given I navigate, this is one feature. If I wrote another feature for login registration, I do not need to repeat this given I navigate on there. I will just be able to continue because I've written the background here for multiple scenarios, for instance. So basically that's why this works here. You don't need to repeat it down here. You can just then continue when I click on, or when, you just do a continuation. You don't need to keep rewriting it. So that's basically what this background is for when you're writing multiple scenarios. So I'll just delete that because I'm not using a background. I'm writing just one test case. So given I navigate to the URL, you can be more explicit with how you write your URL. You can write exactly what URL you're navigating to. Basically, that also helps because sometimes you might be working on a lot of projects at work, and so you have a lot of different URL to navigate to. So if you write URL, it might just clash with the next one because you're writing URL for all of it. And the way with automation, once you write one and it's repeated in another feature, it will just automatically pick that feature. You will not be able to write it again, write your codes again in the next step definition. So if you're not going to be using the same URL for all your features, then it's better to make it more informative. But if it's going to be the same URL for all the features you're working on, then you can just leave, a particular, this format of writing there. So I'm going to leave this because we're only working on that URL. I'm not doing much on there. So what are we trying to do? I'll just go back to the URL. So like I said, we're going to be registering. So the first thing we want to do is we want to enter the username. So I'll go back here. So I'll write when I enter the username. And I said that we have three most important things here, which is the given, when, and then. But obviously, if you look at this URL, you see that we can't use a then because we still have the email, the password, and the confirm password to write. So obviously, you can't use then because then is the result. So at this point in time, you can actually use and. So you can continue whatever you're writing with and. So that's what I'm going to do now. And I enter the email. And I enter password. And I enter confirm password. And so we have this privacy, and so I tick. So this is a tick box here. So I tick the terms of use and privacy. Okay, so and then what is our action? Our result is then I validate that I am successfully registered. So basically what I have done here is I have written in a Gekin language. Anybody, even for all of you here, you're new to automation, what I've written here, all of you understand this. Once you see it, everybody understands what I'm trying to do. It's just making it very easy for the business because they're not automation testers, they're not testers, they don't know exactly what you're trying to do when they see the framework, but they can click on this and understand exactly what you've done. So I have them written the features, and for me to then, the next stage is I need to then work or link this up so that it works, so that I can get my elements and then I can spin it, which is when I say run your test. And how am I going to do that? What I'm going to do is, once I click in, you can see this gray box here. You can see all of it is gray. What I'm then going to do is, once I click in between, you can see my cursor here, and you can see this bulb here. I'll click on this bulb, and this gives me three options. Two of them is basically what I really need. So you can see it says create step definition, create all step definition. I'll tell you the difference between these two. When I say create step definition, basically what this is doing is, it's just going to create a step definition for this line 5. I'm on line 5. It's just going to create this singular one. And I'm going to show you that now. You can see that we're trying to create a step definition file. I'm going to rename this. It says file name. I want to rename it to match what I've got for my features. So basically the reason I'm making sure that I'm renaming it as well is, if I need to make any changes, I know what is linking to what. So I know my registration feature is going to be linking to my registration step definition. The naming convention is very important so that once you do that, it's easier for you to navigate it. It's easier for anybody else, because with automation framework as well, sometimes someone might have built the framework, which is something like what I'm doing right now. And then when you get into the workplace, you just need to add some additional features. Maybe you're doing, they've added a new functionality and you need to add those functionality into the existing file they've got. So it's easier for you to just go in there and then be able to make your changes. So that's why the naming convention and everything is very important. So it's easier for anybody to read. And so I'll just change this now to registration step def. Okay, before I actually do that, let me not even do that yet. Before I do that, as you can see here, I've created this directory for features. So I'm going to do the same thing for step definition before I then link this, my feature, to that. So for me to be able to do that, what I need to do is, so I've got my test. I'll click on it. This is my test. Then I'm going into my Java. Then I right click on that. I go to new and I click on package. Then I now want to add the name. So before I start writing the name, make sure that you go back into your test runner. And I mentioned earlier that I've got a glue. Your step definition is your glue. Basically, that is what will make your features to run, what will make anything that you've written as your elements to be able to run. So it's the glue that makes sure that those things that you've written in these feature files actually then works. So I'm going to copy exactly this name. This is the name convention I want to use because that's what they have used here for my glue. So I'll go back to my Java, right click, new. Then I want to have my package, and then I paste that name of my glue. I'll put it in there and I click enter. And you can see my glue is going to glue because I've got this exact name convention here. Now what I then need to do is, how do I make sure that my glue works? I need to make sure that I activate my features that I've written for my registration so that it links into it. And for me to do that, so I'm going to do two different ways. So I'm going to show how to use the step definition, create step definition, as well as create all step definitions. So I'll click on that. Then I'll just change the naming convention again, registration, step definition, and I've got my Java. And as you can see, this is saying incorrect step definition directory path. Why? Because when you look at this, I've only got it up to Java. I need it up to step definition. Once I click into that, as you can see, this is my step definition directory that I just created. So I click OK. I click OK. Let me explain this pop-up that is coming up. As you can see, this keeps saying, do you want to add the following file to Git? Git is a version control. Yeah, so I can immediately add it to my Git, but at a workplace, we don't do that because you need a code. Someone else has to review your code before you can go straight into your Git file. So I'm not going to do that. Although this is my personal one, but it's advisable not to ever do that. Someone has to review your code before you can then push it in, or you can even push it in. But when you're merging, there has to be someone within two people really that has to check on your codes before they can then merge it. I'll get into that more later if we do have the time. So I'll cancel that. And so as you can see here, this has then set up my methods. So it's basically what I've written here. And you can see that this gray has been removed, but it's broken it down to me as my methods. So this is it here. So I'll then go back here. I want to also make sure that the rest are also linked there. So once I click in between, you can see my bulb light. I click on that. Now I'm going to use create all step definition. Create all step definition. The rest would actually link in as well. So that's all I'm going to do with that. And it's giving me options. Create a new file. We don't want to because we already have created a file before. So we just click on what we've created before. If I go back to my features, you can see everything is not gray anymore because now it's been linked to my step definition. So that is basically how you create your feature files and you link it to your step definition, which is going to be acting as your glue. So what is the next thing that we're going to be doing now? We're going to be doing a bit of setup. And what setup are we actually needing right now? The setup we're needing is, don't forget, I mentioned when I was in the home that I have added a driver, which is my Chrome driver. And okay, let me explain the Chrome driver as well before we get into it. So basically, with the Chrome driver, what you need to do is when you go onto your Chrome, for instance, and you go to your settings, you want to make sure that you've got the right version for your settings, and that is so about Chrome, and you can see my version here. It says 103.0. whatever. So you need to download that version you've got. So you need to go into Google and you need to, so let's say download Chrome, and you can see once you're typing, because a lot of, obviously, we have a lot of automation testers, a lot of automation online. Anything you have an issue with, once you click on it, you see there are people already trying to do it. So I just click on that, and then I can download the Chrome, and you see different version. So you're using Chrome 104, please download this. I just showed you the version I'm using. That is the version I would download. If you don't download the version that is similar to your Chrome driver, for instance, then when you're running your test, it wouldn't spin, it won't come up because you've got an incorrect version of the Chrome driver that you've actually installed. So that's why. And once you've downloaded that, that would naturally go into your download folder. But what you want to do is, so let me go into the framework again. What you want to do is, you want to go to the right part. So as you can see, when I clicked on this, can you see the part I've got at the top? See user, Josephina, ideal part. That is my project part. If I open that part, then under your resources, all I've done here is I've created a new folder, and then I've pulled that file, I've then pulled it here. So that's all you need to do. So I'll just show you that for people that are not. So I've got, sorry. So see user, users, so this is the same Chrome driver you can see in here. This Chrome driver here. All I've just done is I've moved it from my downloads and I've moved it here. Once you do that, it will automatically appear in your framework. So that's all I've done here. Okay, so we'll just continue. Now I need to set up my Chrome driver so that it's working inside my step definition. And don't forget, I've said that my step definition is my glue. So for that to work, what I then need to do is I need to call this Chrome driver. But how do I call the Chrome driver? I have to call it with a web driver. So I'm going to write public static web driver So I've written the code. Basically, what am I telling this code? I'm saying this code, you're going to be my web driver to drive this Chrome driver. So that's basically this code that I've written here. And then the next thing I want to do now is I want to write another code that this Chrome driver should then work. And how do I write that in here? I'll just show you. So that will be system. And you can see as I'm typing, once you know what to write, it will give you suggestions. You just need to click on it. And you can see what I need to set this property. And what property am I trying to set? I'm trying to set my Chrome driver property. So I want my web driver. So now the part I've just showed you here, I need to pull that part in here. And how do I do that? What I normally tend to do is I right click on this Chrome driver. And as you can see, it says copy path / reference. So I just click there and I want the absolute path. So I'll paste that path. So that is basically what I've done. The part I showed you earlier, as you can see, this is the part. So I've set that up. Now I need to complete my setup for that. And that is my driver. I'm going to be calling this driver here. You can see that this driver is not highlighted yet. So I'm going to be calling that driver. And you can see the difference now. This color has changed because I'm calling it. So I've called my driver. Now, what do I want to do? This URL that I said we're going to be testing on, I'm going to be also writing the code for that. So I'm going to copy this URL. I'm going to go back. I'm going to say driver. I want it to get. And what am I telling it to get? I'm telling it to get that URL. So what I can do now is, let's run this. Let's see if our Chrome driver is actually going to spin up and if this URL is actually going to open up. And how do I do that? I go straight to my registration features. I right click, and as you can see here, it says run feature registration. I click in there, and then let's see if that actually works. Okay, so this is something else that tends to happen from time to time. Sometimes you can, I'll just show you this error message. It says, my step is undefined, even though I have all the steps here. As you can see, these steps are here, so there shouldn't be any reason why it says is undefined. Sometimes it might just be because I haven't rebuilt my project. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to run the test again. And hopefully that should actually, resolve that issue I have. Okay, I think that is completed now. I'm just going to run it again. And as you can see, that has resolved that issue for us. Now we just need to, so that has also spinned up that URL, as you can see. But you can see that this URL is not a full screen. So what do I want to do? I want to make sure that I maximize that page so that it's a full screen. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to close this down. And then I'm just going to go into my code back. And what do I want to write? I just want to tell my page to maximize once it opens up. For me to do that, what do I write? So I write another code. So that is what, and I'm going to run it again so you can see that that has actually, so basically you need to keep writing exactly what you're wanting it to do, but obviously you need to know what you're trying to do. Okay, no, that hasn't, I think I need to rebuild. I'm not sure why my page always needs to rebuild before it works. So let me just rebuild again. A lot of time you don't always need to rebuild, but I'm not sure if it's because of my laptop or something. I always have to rebuild for every code I write. So this should actually expand it now, if I'm not mistaken. So as you can see, exactly what I've told it to do, that's what it's done. So now what do we want to do? We now need to start entering the details of what we want. So for example, we want to add a username, we want to add an email address, we want to add a password, we want to confirm the password. So that's what we're going to do. And how do we do that? It's not advisable to, when you're trying, we call it inspecting our elements. When we're trying to do that, it's not advisable for you to use, as you can see here, it says Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. It's not advisable to do that on there. It's best to close this down and then go back to the URL that you've opened before. And for you to be able to enter those information, what you do is, for whichever tab you want to go on, you right click. And as you can see, it says inspect here. That's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to inspect so that we can get the elements. And how do we get the elements? You can see that all these informations, they've opened up for me here. So what I need to do, normally, when you're at work, this is how it would come for you at work. I just changed it over. So you can scroll down. Let me scroll down. So the first thing we're trying to do is enter this username. For you to do that, already is highlighted here. And you can see that blue icon there. It's highlighted on your right. On your left, you can see the blue icon. So basically, we've got different types of ways that we can inspect our elements. Very important one, we've got quite a few. So in this here, when we're inspecting elements, we have the name. So I'll click on the ones that are important for you. The name here, there's the class. If you right click, these are the ones that are visible on this particular page. That's why I'm mentioning it for this username. When you right click, you can see where it says copy. You have copy selector, and you also have copy expert. So for this username alone, you've got 4 different ways in which you can actually copy an element. So today I'm going to be using, we could try quite a few. Sometimes, even though you've got them on, sometimes you might not be able to use some because they might be duplicates all over the page or the way the developer has written it. And I'll show you a sample of what I mean. So at the bottom here, you can see this login, and you can see that it's got 20 matches, which means that on this page, you've got login as 20. So if you're trying to use this name, which is equals to login, for this username, it would not recognize it because it's got 20 that are on the same page. So they're going to be, they're not going to realize which of the login functionality you want to use. So it wouldn't work. And if I also copy class name, for instance, so I'm going to take this off. So how did I get this empty space that I'm on? What I just did was I clicked Control and F at the same time, and that gave me this empty space here. So I would normally use that because I want to be able to find out. You need 1 of 1. And for this as well, you can see I have 1 of 7. So that has duplicated it 7 times as well. I'm looking for 1 of it. It's only if he's got 1 of it that it would work. So if, for instance, because I've pasted 1 of 7, this form dash control here, you can see that it's moved away from that hyperlink that I had before. If I wanted to make sure that it goes back to the hyperlink I have, if you click on this first arrow here, which says select an element in the page to inspect, if you click on it, then you go to which one you want to inspect and click into it, it takes me back, as you can see. So what I now want to do is, I want to also check, I've told you that I've got copy selector as well as copy expert. So I'll copy selector as well. So let's see how many we've got in the selector. Okay, so this shows 1 of 1. But as you can see with this 1 of 1, it's such a long form of writing. It's not advisable, especially because it's got a lot of, in-betweens and all of that. So I personally would not use this CSS selector. So I've got one last option, isn't it? I've got copy expert. This is also long, but it doesn't give me those break in between like the CSS selector gave me. So I would use this one at this point in time to write my code. So I'll go back into my framework. And at this point in time, don't forget, the first one we did was navigating to the URL. And that's why I wrote all this code. So that is matching against what I'm actually doing because I've written it into a Gherkin language. I now need to write it. I'm writing in, hold on, enter username. So now when I'm writing my code, I'm going to go in between where I've got enter username. So to then write my code, how do I write my code? So I'll write driver dot find element. Okay, I'm going to explain the difference between find element and find elements as well. So find element is singular. So when you're making an action for a single, like the username I'm just writing now, so I can use find element. When I'm entering for find elements, if I have like a block of the same thing, so let me go to this URL for example. So if I had a block of username, password, all of that block, and they all have the same elements, and I want them to paste it at the same time, then I can use find elements. So find element is for multiple, find element is for one. So that's the layman term of explaining it. So I want to find elements. And how do I want to find the elements? We copied by expert. So I want to find this element by expert. So I say by, and as you can see, it's giving me quite a lot. So this has given us all the sort of elements that we can sort of use. So we have by name, there's by class name, there's by ID, there's by CSS selector, there's by lint text, there's by partial lint text, there's by tag name, there's by expert. When I was on the URL, we only had 4 out of all these that's been listed. So, but I'm using the expert because that's the only one I found that I wanted to use, and we had 2 that had 1 of 1, but this was the best for me based on the way it was written. So I'm going to paste that. So what I normally do for new starters is advise that as you're writing your codes, it's better for you to run it to make sure that it's work as you wanted it. If you write a block of codes, if one of them do not work, you have to start looking for where it doesn't work. Whereas if you've done it the simplest way by writing your code and running it, then you know where it's not working and you can try and quickly resolve it. So I would normally advise this process. So like I said, I'm going to rebuild my project. I'm not sure why my system rebuilds. A lot of the time, you don't have to do that. You should just automatically sync in, and then you should just be able to go to registration and run your test from there. So now what we want, actually, no, I need to stop this, sorry. Because I said you should enter username, isn't it? I've told it to enter a username, but at this point in time, I haven't given it an instruction for what username to enter. As you can see at the back, I've just put a double column. It's not going to enter anything because I didn't tell it to do it. So for it to enter a username, I should tell it to do something. So I should say, okay, I'm telling it to send keys. So send keys is like enter something. So that's what send keys is. I'm telling it to send this information into that box. And what do so as a tester, I would normally use testing, tester. That's what I would normally tend to use at the workplace. Except you're giving specific data to enter, then instead of putting test, then you can put exactly that data you've been told. So that's that. So I'm going to rebuild. And then we want to see this magic happen for this test to actually be inputted into that box for the username. Voila, as you can see, this is that information that I wrote in this framework. It appears on the site. So now that we've done this, we want to go into the email as well and write that. So let's find our elements so we can then write the elements. So to do that, I'll just go back here. So let's now inspect the elements. So here as well, we've got name, which is email. We've got the class as well. And then once you right click, there are two that you've got there, which is for CSS selector as well as expert. So let's try this name. Let's see if we have one of one there. Okay, we have one of two. Sometimes, let me just see what the two is. Oh yeah, we've got the type as well as name. This will probably be a good one to use because we can specifically say name is equals to email. If you wanted to be specific about the type of, that's not one of our, as you can see, the list that we had, type was not part of it. So we can just use this name, or let's see what else we've got for the CSS selector. Let me see with that. No, not at all. So at this point in time, I'm going to be using email. So I'm going to go to this method as well, and then I'm going to write the same thing, driver dot find element. How do I want to find it this time around? I'm going to say name. And then what name are we going to use? We're telling it to send something. So let's say test@test.com. So let's see if that actually also worked. Will it throw it in? Let's check it. Fantastic. As you can see there, that has also worked. So the next thing we're going to do now is password as well as confirm password. So use this now. Go back to the URL. So I've also got name as password. Let me just double check as well. Okay, so we've got 10 of that, so that is not visible to use. So let me check other ones. So let me try the CSS. Let's see what we've got there. Okay, no, we're probably going to be using expert as well here. Yep. So 1 of 1. So I'm going to get this. And then I'm going to also mention something briefly as well. I just remembered, let me just write this. But before I get into spinning it, I'm going to also show you something else. Just in case, the reason I'm going to show this is sometimes because you've written a registration page and another feature's come in, but it's gone into another file and you're not sure how to get from your feature files to your step definition for that particular feature, then I'm going to show you how to get from there in your feature files, how to get to that page for your glue, which is going to be your step definition. I'm going to show you that as well. So I've missed out by experts. Okay, so there's some basic errors that could happen. As you can see here, it's showing some red because I'm not inputting the details correctly. That's why it's showing those errors. I'm just going to copy it again. And then go to the URL. Just copy it from there. Okay, so now you can see that I don't have those squiggly red lights there. Now, before I run this or rebuild as well, I'll just show you what I'm trying to say. So for instance, if you have another feature, let's say that your login, your registration, and for whatever reason, like I said, that if you were writing a new feature and it had login, and this is written as well, you do not have to write the code again because this will link automatically. Once it's written once in any of your feature files, it would link automatically to the next, like it would link automatically to your registration. But you can also use it for your login. You don't need to repeat this, like this code here. I'm going to navigate there. This is exactly what I want to show you, how to get there without you going into your step definition and looking for it. So if you go to, and then you click on implementation, as you can see, this is voila, taking me to that page. So if you needed to change, for instance, maybe the URL, they've updated the URL, or you're testing on different environments, you could just go straight from your feature files, go in there and see, because if you're writing a lot of codes, you can't be scrolling through to know where exactly it is. You can just go straight from your features, click on there, right click, you can see go to, see implementation, you can see it's taking me there. So that's how you can go directly if you have a lot of scenarios to go through. So that's how you do that. And so now I'm going to rebuild, and then we can see that the password, oh, I've not written the password yet. Mistake, very easy mistake to make. I always put select column at the back instead of putting the details I need. And that's why I said, once you do it one after the other, it's easy for you to spot as opposed to you doing it in a lump and then you don't know where you've made your mistakes. So I'm going to use password here. 1, 2. So now I rebuild. And then I'm going to run. You can see at the bottom, my rebuild is loading. That's why I haven't run it. Once it finishes, then I can now run it. And there we go. You can see the password as well has been entered. Now I'm going to write for the confirm password, and then we're going to write for this and then finish it off. Okay, let's see if the name would work. Let's see. Okay, 1 of 1, fantastic. So I'm just going to use that. Rebuild it again, and then I'm going to run that, and then go to the tick, find the elements, and then see if that also works. And we'll confirm it. There we go. So these are tick box. We'll just check. Whenever you want to click on something or tick on something, then you're going to be using the click, because we're not sending anything this time around. We actually want to click into something. So we'll use the click function at this point in time. I'll just check this element as well. Yes, we've got 1 of 1, so that's fine. I'll just go back into my framework. Okay, so let's see that. So that's spinning at the moment, spinning up. And that has ticked it. So now what we then want to do is we want to click on the register button as well. So we want to find that element as well. So So you notice that even though this was a tick, we clicked. Now we've got this register button. This is also going to be a click. Okay, so it might seem a bit different, but we're trying to make the same action. We have to click in here for that tick to show. We have to click this as well because we're not putting anything into it. We just want to click it. So that is why that function is click as well. So let's just get this element as well. Okay, now we've got, let me check the expert. I think the expert is a bit, yeah, that's fine, 1 of 1. So let's use that. Oh, I omitted out the and I submit button. So I'm going to write it. Yeah. Is it submit or register? Register. So I'm going to write. Click. So let's assume that they've just added the new functionality, which is that register button, and we're updating that into our scenario, which is what I've just done. For me to link it into my step definition, all I need to do is, you can see this bulb is showing up already. I click in that. I'm only doing one function. I'm trying to add just one. Even if I had like multiple, I could still click all step definition as well, if there were quite a few. But I've only got one, but I want to link it into this existing step definition. So I click into that, and you can see it's coming to the same page for me. And what I want to do is write my code, driver dot find element. And how are we finding our element? That was by expert. And I want to click on that button as well. So now let me rebuild and then I'll run. Okay, that clicked. I can't see this spinning up. Okay, I think this is a test website, so it's still in operation. But normally what should happen is, once we click on this, we should get a successful message. As you can see, I think there's a message coming up here, but sorry, this user already exists. Okay, so they're saying that that user already exists. So this details I've used already exist. So let me change this to, let's use test 1, 2, 3 or something like that. And then we should try again. Let me just change that. So I'm going to rebuild and then run it again. Before I run it again, you can see here, it shows a tick. I haven't validated it yet, but basically all the code that has been written, all the elements, it shows that this actually worked as it should. I just have not written the validation, but I'm going to run it now and then we'll see that he actually also passed on the URL. All right, so there are instructions, but this is now a green tick. It says, please follow the instructions sent to your email. So which means that this has been successful. I've gotten a test email. I think you then need to click on that link to complete it. But once that has been verified, then you can enter your username and password, and then we could do the login functionality as well. So basically, that is the automation framework and setup done successfully. We also have our tick here.